Once upon a time, in a small village nestled beside a deep forest, there lived a woodcutter who led a simple life. Every day, he carried his axe into the forest from early morning, diligently chopping wood to sell for money to support his family. Though his life was hard, he always held on to the belief that with hard work, everything would eventually turn out well. One day, while venturing deep into the forest in search of good timber, he came across a rotten log lying across the path. The log looked completely worthless, soft, damp, and cracked all over. Most people would have ignored it without a second thought, but the woodcutter stopped and stared at it for a long while. Even though it's rotten, it must have once been a strong, healthy tree, he thought to himself. And who knows, maybe there's still a solid core inside that can be used. With that thought, he hoisted the log onto his back and carried it home, despite the whispers and chuckles of passers-by. Some laughed and called him foolish, wondering why he would waste his effort on something so seemingly useless. But he paid no attention to their words. He believed that if there was still good wood inside, it was worth the effort. The story begins with that unusual choice. Where most saw something worthless, he saw potential. And that seemingly useless rotten log, surprisingly, would become the starting point of a chain of events that would change the woodcutter's life forever. After bringing the rotten log home, the woodcutter began carefully removing the damaged outer layers, revealing a surprisingly solid core inside. With years of experience, he knew that with a bit of time and effort, the remaining wood could still be used to create something useful. Day by day, he patiently carved and polished each section. Although the log had looked unsightly on the outside, the woodcutter's meticulous and persistent work began to yield results. Over time, the log no longer resembled a worthless piece of decaying wood. Instead, it had been transformed into a beautiful and sturdy wooden chair. The chair featured elegant swirling wood grain patterns, something that only time and patience could reveal. The villagers were astonished when they saw the finished chair. They were amazed by the woodcutter's craftsmanship, the same man they had once considered simple and uneducated. Everyone had to admit that the chair was not only beautiful but also remarkably durable, capable of lasting for years. The woodcutter smiled warmly and shared with the villagers. It's not the outer appearance that determines value, but how we perceive it and turn it into something useful. That simple statement carried a deep lesson, not to judge things by their appearance. Sometimes what others see as worthless may hold great potential, if only we have the patience and skill to uncover it. With the beautiful wooden chair completed, the woodcutter didn't keep it for himself but decided to bring it to the market to sell. When he arrived, the market was bustling with vendors selling all kinds of goods. Many looked at the chair with skepticism and scoffed. Some villagers asked him, "Why would you go through all that trouble to make a chair from a rotten log? Wouldn't it have been cheaper to just buy new wood?" However, the woodcutter paid no attention to their mockery. He simply smiled and replied, "Look closely at this chair. Although the outer part of the wood was decayed, the inside was still strong, and I poured my heart into creating something valuable. What matters is not the appearance, but what you do with what you have." Eventually, a customer approached and decided to buy the chair. This person didn't judge it by how it looked but recognized the woodcutter's craftsmanship and the care he took in turning old wood into something useful. The buyer saw value not just in the material but in the effort and dedication that had gone into making it. The woodcutter smiled warmly, accepted the payment, and felt a deep sense of satisfaction. He understood that in life, true value doesn't always come from things that are new or flawless. Sometimes what's been discarded or overlooked can be the most precious resource, if only we know how to recognize it and transform it into something meaningful. After the story of the woodcutter and the wooden chair made from a rotten log spread throughout the village, many people began to reevaluate how they judged the things around them. Old items and seemingly worthless objects became valuable lessons about patience and the importance of looking deeper into everything. One day, the woodcutter returned to the forest to continue his work. He no longer saw rotten logs as useless waste, but as opportunities to create something new. He realized that every time he chose a piece of wood, no matter how rough or ugly it looked on the outside, he could always find something special within. To him, it wasn't just wood for making furniture. It was a part of a story he wanted to tell through each of his creations. Every wooden chair the woodcutter made carried with it a part of his heart and valuable lessons about perseverance. He never rushed or chased perfection. Instead, he understood that every flaw and every mark left by time was an essential part of his creative journey. The woodcutter also began teaching those around him how to recognize the value in what they already had. He encouraged them not to judge something only by its appearance but to feel the meaning and hidden worth within it. The story of the woodcutter taught everyone an important lesson. True value doesn't always lie on the surface, but in how we choose to appreciate and nurture what we have. It was his patience and love for his craft that helped the woodcutter not only create beautiful products but also inspire the people around him.